Hello, everyone. Welcome to this class of mobile development. And we're going to have a little bit of a mix between theory and practice uh, with the first kind of approach that we have with React Native. So we're going to try to set up the environment, understand how we're going to set up that environment, and hopefully by the end of the class, get our first Hello World program up and running. So let's get to it. So first of all, how we're going to approach this? First of all, we're going to install React Native using NPM. But for that, we have to understand how NPM works and what NPM is. You probably haven't heard that before. And the second thing that we're going to do is try to run our first Hello World program on React Native. Okay, so let's get to it. So first of all, NPM. So NPM it stands for Node Package Manager. And this is pretty much a piece of software that allows us to include dependencies on our Node.js program. One of the good things about it is that it comes installed with Node.js. So as soon as you install Node.js, NPM is automatically included for you. So you really don't have to do anything else. All you have to do is just install Node.js and NPM is there. So at this point, I am assuming that you already have Node.js installed. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and uh, run npm commands. Now, I already said that npm allows me to install dependencies and install packages. In other words, what we're going to be doing is using code that somebody else has written for us to use and to implement in our own code. So how do we do it? Well, there is a handful of commands for npm commands. So for example, I can install a package saying npm install and the name of the package that I want to install. Of course, that has to be run in the command line. Uh, for example, if I want to uninstall a package, I have to say npm uninstall and the name of the package that I want to uninstall. If I want to see the package that I have installed, I can say npm ls, which stands for list. So it allows me to see the list of packages that are installed. And I can also say update packages, npm update, which allows me to update the packages to the latest versions that they are available. Now, there is a slight difference that you have to kind of keep in mind when it comes to installing packages. So uh, in npm there is an option that is called a global package, and we can do that adding an additional -g to the command. For example, I can say npm install the name of the package -g, and what that -g means is that that particular package is going to be installed globally in your system. So your whole computer is going to have that package available. And that's the way we're going to install React Native, because we want our whole computer to be able to use React Native and to create React Native projects in different folders. Now, if it's not global, then it means that it's local. So if I open a particular folder and in that folder I run npm install a package name, what is going to happen is that that package name is going to be installed to be used only in that folder. And that's going to be the difference between a global installation and a local installation. So they both still happening locally in your computer, but if it's a global installation, it's going to be available across the whole computer. But if it's local, it's only going to be available inside the folder in which that particular library has been installed. That is particularly useful when you're using a particular library for a particular application that is only relevant in that application. So you really don't need to install a dependency, for example, for the camera module of your phone in your whole computer, because it's only your application, the one that is actually going to need it. Okay, so if you want some more information about some basic commands of NPM, I'll give you a couple of links in there. So take a look at those commands on your own time and see what other capabilities NPM has. We're going to have a look at some of them today, but I'm just giving you the links for you to take a look. Now that we know how to install things, what are we going to be installing? Well, some of you would say, I'm going to install React Native. But that's not really the case. We're going to install a framework called EXPO. And what is EXPO, you would ask? Well, EXPO is a framework that includes React Native at its core, but it also includes some extra functionality that will allow us to develop applications very, very easily and quickly. So to install Expo, all we need to do is open a command line and say npm install expo-cli, that's the name of the package, expo CLI, and we're going to say -g. Why? Because I want expo CLI to be available in my whole computer. Now let's give that a go, and we're going to go here, and we're going to say npm install expo CLI -g. Now, in my case, it's going to be quite straightforward because in my computer, I already have installed Expo CLI. But in your case, it may take a little bit longer. Why? Well, because it's going to download all of the frameworks and all of the packages and all of the code that it needs for it to install. You're going to notice that in my case, it's going to be a lot faster than what is going to be in your case. So just be patient and bear with it until Expo CLI gets installed in your own system, okay? Here it is. It is installed, and actually, because I already had it installed, it's saying that 4 packages were updated. And that's fine. It's just telling me that I made an installation a couple of months ago, and now a few packages have been updated. So it's telling me, okay, now that you're running this installation, this package has been updated. Anyway, whatever you install this, you're going to be getting the latest versions uh, of these packages. Okay, now that I have what I need, so what do I do? Well, the next thing that I have to do is to create my first project. And for this, it is very important that you know in what folder you are working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my command line, and I know I'm just going to open my desktop folder, so I know exactly where things are getting. So I just want to go into a folder that I know where to find. I'm just going to say there, cd desktop, and there I'm going to run a command that is going to initialize my Expo project for myself. So how do you do that? There is a command there on the screen that is expo init and the name of the project. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So expo init, and I'm going to call this my first project. So a couple of things are going to happen. So, but the first thing is that it's going to ask me what type of project I want, whether I want a blank project with TypeScript, a tabs project with TypeScript, and minimal or minimal with TypeScript. The reason I'm going to go, I'm not going to go into TypeScript because TypeScript is something that we like. TypeScript is it's a variation of JavaScript. It's based on Java, but uses types as opposed to dynamic typing. So because TypeScript on its own has a little bit of a learning curve, I'm going to stick to regular JavaScript. So I'm going to go with a regular blank application. There you go. So it is going to download some dependencies that your application is going to need, and it's going to install some JavaScript dependencies that your application is going to need, and it's going to create that folder for us. We'll see in a second what that means. My A project has been created already, and I have a couple of options in here. The command line straight away is telling me you can cd my first project, so it will go into that particular folder, or I can run a couple of commands in here. Before we do anything, I just want to go a little bit into, I just want to explain these things one by one. I don't want just to try things for the sake of trying them. I'd rather understanding what we're doing in here. So the first thing is CD, my first project. What CD does is just to go into that particular folder, but that would be equivalent of just running, just going into your uh, file explorer. So if I go to my file explorer, you can see something that wasn't there before, that I have a new folder there called my first project. That first project has been created. And if I double click on that, you can see that that application has already a couple of things in there. We'll go into detail with them in a second. And one of the things that it has is a Git folder. So as soon as I create a new EXPO project, which is a React Native project, it is creating a Git repository in that folder straight away. So I don't need to create it. I can add it to my GitHub desktop if I want, but the repository has already been initialized for us. Okay, I don't need to explore anything else from the file explorer kind of system. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And I'm just going to go into my CD, my first project. So I'm going into that folder and I can see that my prompt is on that folder. Okay. Now, how can I run this? So you probably have already an idea because the command line is telling you, you can go and say npm run. But before we get there, because that's exactly the point in which this actually is getting very, very, very interesting, let's take a look at what's happening in that folder. There is a particular file called package.json, and I shouldn't have closed the folder. I'll open it up and I'll show you here. So let's take a look at that package.json file. So if you open that with any editor, I'm going to use Notepad++ because it's very quick and fast. We can see that I have a script section in there. And one of the script is the option start. That says that if I try to start, I will run expo start. And if I try to Android, it's going to do expo start Android. So these scripts are part of your NPM capabilities, and that's part of what NPM does. So if I say NPM start, in the background, that thing is going to run expo start. And if I say NPM Android, in the background, it is going to run expo start Android. And if I say NPM web, it is going to do expo start web. So the short answer to this is, if I want to run this program, all I need to do is say npm start, as we can see there on the slide. Now, the thing is that now we understand where npm start is coming from. It's just not because I just do npm start. I understand that that is a script that has been defined in the package.json file that has been created for us. So now we know where that's coming from. Perfect. So let's do that. Let's try to run it and see what we get. So I'm going to go back to my command line. We're going to say npm start. Now, a couple of things are going to happen. So expo is going to start, and a web page or a web browser is going to pop up. So I'm just going to show you that. There. So that web browser is popping up there. Now, that still is not my application. So that is still not, that is something that is happening there, but it's not really my application. I want to see my application in my phone. That's the whole point of this. Well, things are not that easy, especially when you are doing hybrid development. You're really developing a web application. And we're going to go into the details of that. The first option that we have to run this and to try this hello world application that we just created, that we just don't even know what it does, and spoiler alert, it doesn't do anything, is we can use a web browser. And the web browser is going to be the tool that we're going to use the most. Why is that? Well, because it's quick and easy. I don't have to do much things. As soon as I have my application up and running in the web browser, I can see what it looks like. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to open the web browser and try to run that. So you see in the page that opened before, you have an option there which is run a web browser, and that running web browser will open. You see, starting web package import something something. Actually, something also came up in here, so it is doing the deployment for a web environment. And once that is done, another another tab is opening. And now I can see something. Open up app.js to start working on your app. So this is my app. My app is very simple. It only has a text there because it is a Hello World application. Do I want to see what this looks like in a phone? Yeah, I can go to inspect and I can give it a phone feeling. So I can, for example, simulate a Pixel 2, for example. This is my form factor of a Pixel 2, and this is what it's going to look like in a phone. Good. Now, that's the first option. By default, I can run this application in a web environment, and that's what we're going to do most of the time. But there are other ways of doing this. The next way of doing is running an emulator. So I can have an emulator on my phone, on my computer, to simulate my phone. It could be to simulate an Android device, or it could be to simulate an iOS device. Now, I won't be doing that. The reason I won't be doing that is because the web browser is just as effective and it does exactly the same thing. And the problem with the emulator is, in the case of Android, you have to install Android Studio. And we already know the problems with Android Studio. They're way too heavy. Now, if you want to go ahead and install Android Studio and set up your emulator, you can do so. There is nothing stopping you from that. And I actually would encourage you to do it if you want to explore working with an emulator. Good thing about the emulator is that the emulator allows you to have a real feeling of what the application is going to feel like in the phone without actually having the phone. Now, regarding iOS, the problem is that you need to have a Mac to run an emulator. So if you're a Windows user or a Linux user, you won't be able to run an emulator for iOS. So that is a little bit of a pain in the neck. Again, it has to do with how restricted Apple is with, with their third-party developers. So I don't own a Mac, and that's why I won't be running Xcode emulation either. Now, can I test this application? This is a new Hello World application. Can I test this in an actual phone? Yes, you can. And there are two ways also of testing this application. The first one is using the EXPO client from the App Store or the Play Store. You go to App Store. In my case, I have an Android phone. Download the EXPO client, and you have to set up the application. It's just as easy as open the application and scan this QR code that I'm going to show you there. So the QR code that just came up, you just scan that with your phone with the EXPO app, and that will download the code that it is in the application, and it will emulate it in your phone. And you can actually feel the actual application in an actual phone. Yes, it is actually very, very straightforward, and it works very well. No, I just want to give you a couple of warnings in here, typical mistakes that typical students make. The first one, the phone that you're using and the computer that you're using have to be connected to the same Wi-Fi. The reason is because the phone doesn't have the source code of your application. The source code of your application is in your computer. So it will try to access the computer to get the source code in order to deploy the application in the phone. So if they're not connected in the same Wi-Fi, that is not going to happen. The second thing is because the phone is going to try to get the source code from the computer has to have the firewall down. If it's not the firewall down, at least an exception to the firewall has to be added in that particular port. So the easiest way to do that is just to lower your firewall for 10 or 15 minutes while you're testing your app and just bring it back up. Just make sure you always bring it back up uh, because firewalls are necessary and they're good and they're needed. So you want to have your firewall up all the time, except for when you're trying your phone. Okay, so those are that is a way. So that works for both iOS and Android, regardless of what your development computer is. If you're working in Windows, in Linux, or Mac, you can download the EXPO client app in your phone and try the application. Remember, both is the same Wi-Fi, and the computer has to have a firewall down. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time in the class for you to practice this and get that Hello World working in your phone. Now, the other way of trying this in the actual phone is the second option to do this is to actually install the application physically in your computer. Sorry, in your phone. For that, you need to run that command that I have on the screen, which is expo build colon platform. Uh, if you want to install for Android, you say expo build colon Android, and if you want to for iOS, you say colon iOS. The problem with iOS, again, though no things, this is not, again, this is not going to come for free. The first thing is that you need to have an Expo account. So you go to expo.io and you have to open an account. That's not a big deal. So when you're building the application in your command line, it will ask you to log in, and you just log in with your Expo credentials. But because this is building from the cloud, and you'll see that it will tell you there is a link that you can go and see the state of your building, your project will go to a queue of projects. So the queue of projects sometimes can be quite long, so you might have to wait something like between 10 and 15 minutes. So I haven't waited longer than 15 minutes. So if you want to go to the top of the queue, you need to pay. Now we're going to be doing the free version, and we're not going to be really compiling that often, because in the development process, it's more the time that you're going to be testing with the Expo client and with the web browser than you actually deploying to an actual application. Now, if you do that, it's because your application is ready to go. It's in the last phase of the testing. So you have developed using your web browser, you're comfortable with your web browser, you go to your phone with the Expo client app. And after that, once all the tests are passed, then you go to the actual deployment with an APK file. Now, the APK file only for Android. In the case of iOS, you need to have a Mac and an Xcode. So because I don't own one, I'm not gonna go down that road. But if you want to go and explore it yourself, by all means, that's something you can do, not a biggie. So what is going to happen? What is next? So first of all, I'm going to give you plenty of time for you to practice these things. So that is the main thing this week, that you get that hello world up and running, not a problem. The second thing that I want to do is I want to do a little bit of an experimentation with this file. And actually, I'm going to do that before just now. If you go to my project, that is, I'm actually going to open the project in Visual Studio Code. So we can see there that I have an app.js file. And that's where my React application is written. That's where I can see that says open up an app.js to start working on your app. So just to try this, I'm just going to copy this and repeat it. And I'm going to just change there a little bit. I'm going to say Amilcar sucks and save it. At the moment I save it and go back to my web browser, my application has been updated straight away. I really don't have to do anything. And I can see straight away that my application has the new message that I just added in there. And that's the way we're going to be writing the application. We're going to be modifying the system. We're going to talk about the MVC process in this particular system. We're going to be talking about the components in React. So we're going to be messing up with the JavaScript of this application a lot. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now, the first thing, of course, getting the basic up and running, and you have this week to do so. So finally, the next step is going to be, well, you've noticed that there's a lot of JavaScript in here. So we're going to be using JavaScript the whole semester. So because I understand that not everybody has the same background in JavaScript, what we're going to do the next 2 weeks is to do a good refresher of JavaScript. So we're going to be talking about functions, how functions work, what are self-invoked functions, what are promises, what are asynchronous, what is await. So all the nuisance ups and downs and pros and bells and whistles that JavaScript has. So we're going to have a good foundation of JavaScript, and then we'll go on the details of React Native. So hopefully by the end of this week, you should be able to have this Hello World up and running. You should be able to have done 1 or 2 modifications and understand where the modifications are done, and then we can go and create our fantastic applications. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.